Broadcasting worldwide to every nation, this is the Gospel America Television Network. Broadcasting to every nation on Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, and online at gospelamerica.net.
It's the Taking It On Show with Paula Price. With your host, Paula Price, taking on the issues, representing Jesus Christ, unapologetically truthful, taking on popular opinion. And now, it's your host, Paula Price.
Hi, thank you for joining me again. I always like to say thank you because I appreciate us walking this journey together. So what is the journey? What is the it topic of the week? The it topic of the week is you can't judge me. I like that. You can't judge me. You know, again, that's put at us all the time. That's because, we're considered to be a judgment faith. So that's put out all the time. You see it on television. Now it's become popularized. It's become normalized that you can't judge. I always like to deal with this subject. And the reason is because it is a crazy subject. The fact that you tell somebody that they can't judge you means they've judged you. The statement just says they've judged you. You can't judge me. I mean, think about it. So what does that mean? Where did that come from? Well, it comes from, again, the strategy of marginalizing Christianity. What we can't minimize, we want to marginalize. And so it comes into under the whole love thy neighbor, God is love, Jesus is love kind of thing. So for example, if you love somebody, then you can't judge them. Is that true? Is that really the truth? If you love somebody, you can't judge them. Doesn't it mean that we shouldn't have divorce? Doesn't it mean we shouldn't have domestic violence? We shouldn't have any of those kinds of things. In all of those things, folks said they were in love. And so when you love people, you don't judge them, which is part of the problem. As a matter of fact, the entire psychological institution is based on dealing with your love and the health of your relationships and your emotions. So we say you can't judge me because if you judge me, I'm not even quite sure what they think is going to happen if we judge them. I mean, do they go to hell? Do they get sick? I'm not quite sure what they expect to come out of our judgment, but I do know that it's rooted in false doctrine and heresy. I also know that it's rooted in another tactic to depower the Christian faith and the Christian who has faith in Jesus Christ. The judgment, the you can't judge me thing, mantra, and also mandate, because they treat it like a mandate. So now the whole idea is to take good and evil off the table, take right and wrong off the table, and of course, because these are all strung into religion. And so if we take the you can't judge me or take the judgment factor out, then hey, anything goes. My right can't be your wrong. Your wrong cannot be my right. I can't judge you, which is then laying the foundation for a future civilization or population that just falls into plain mayhem. Don't even appreciate each other. Don't apologize for anything you get. Because see, in order for you to apologize, there has to be judgment. See, we have to judge and act. Judge not just a reaction, but judge and act for us to say, I'm sorry. So if you don't ever say that something is right or wrong, or that it hurt you or didn't hurt you, or that it offended you, or that it made you feel if you never say those things, just those statements are replete with judgment. You can't get away from judging. Judging is forming an opinion, making a decision, determining an effect. Forming an opinion, making a decision, and determining an effect. So no way can you get out of it. You can get out of your car to right now. And if you're driving in your car and you get out of your car, and as soon as you get out of your car, somebody swiped past you, you have to render a judgment on that. You didn't care that they swiped past you. They should not have swiped that close. What were they thinking? And you go into a whole chain effect. Every day and every second of every day, we judge. We judge food. We judge restaurants. We judge stores. We judge clothes. We judge hairstyles. We judge products, goods, and services all the time. You cannot avoid judging. What they don't want, however, is a moral judgment, a judgment on moral conduct and moral behavior. They don't want that because, again, then that means that your good has to become my good, or your evil have to become my evil. Even in this whole con, and it is a con, trust me, it is a con. Even in this con, people render judgment. The very person that says you cannot judge me, judge not lest you be judged. There's a reason why Jesus said that, but also there are several Greek terms that the English just called judge. And so the whole idea is that if I say that what you do doesn't make me comfortable, or it makes me uncomfortable, isn't that a judgment? That's a judgment. See, but this is a con. This is a religious con. And the con is to make sure that we are not judged with the laws of righteousness from the Lord Almighty. So we'll just act like no judgment. We just won't tolerate any judgments. And that way we can wipe out all kinds of Christian judgments or Bible judgments. But in the Bible, there are several words for judge that we just call judge. One of them is to discriminate or separate or discern and distinguish between different things. In that list right there is the word detect. That's also part of judging. When you judge, so when you detect something, you're judging. When your teacher grades your paper, they have to render a judgment. You've been judged all the time. When you get your grade for going to school, they're giving you a judgment. Nobody goes back and say, you shouldn't judge how I failed that test. Because you cannot live life without judgment. Where there are options, there will always be judgments. Where there are opinions and thinkers, there will always be judgments. But we just take these slogans and these models and we just run with them, and then we just fling them at people just to bind up other people's perception of our behaviors, our actions, or their effects. So we do it. Another word for judgment is to criticize or critique. We actually got a words criticize and critique from that. And yet in the Bible, the modern Bibles, these translations, they just call it judgment, fitting the agenda. And again, the agenda of powering down Christianity, depowering it, minimizing it, and marginalizing it. So why am I doing this? Because somebody needs to say, this is a con. And this con is meant to release the binds of righteousness or even good. We go to a store. We have awards every year. Emmy, Tony, People's Award, somebody else's award, athletic awards. All those awards are based on what? Judgments. As a matter of fact, we have a panel of judges who are sat there to judge, make a judgment. We judge our teams every week. Every week. So how involved is that? And that panel must critique according to criteria. Critique. Did you hear that? Did you hear the similarity there? They must critique according to criteria. What criteria? The criteria of the best of the best and least of the less. And so here we are. What the Bible said you ought not judge, and we ought not to have competitions. We ought not to have any type of comparisons or comparative actions. We ought not to have training. There ought not to be a grading system. We ought not to have any type of metric system at all, because life is about judging. We judge so much in the course of an hour, we don't register it. Driving down the street, judging the sign on a building. Gee, that's an ugly sign, or they really need to do that better. Judging how, again, someone is driving, judging someone walking across the street, judging an outfit that they're wearing, walking across the street. Ooh, that's a shame. Ooh, that's disgusting. Or, I don't care what they say. I'm going to wear what I want to wear. You can't judge me. Can you really? When Jesus says, judge not, lest ye be judged, you have to also know that Jesus had different audiences. There are things that he said to his leaders that he did not say to his general population. The general population is supposed to judge because it is our job to the leaders are supposed to judge because it's our job to maintain standard, to enforce his righteousness, to keep his kingdom running the way he ordained it. The general population, on the other hand, does not need to take judging into their own hands because they're going to be fighting each other, criticizing each other, because they're judging without knowledge. They're judging without education. They're judging without any experience. They're judging based on biases, personal preferences. See, that's a different set of rules. Whole different set. And still they make up a criteria. Now, the leaders are to set up a standard. That standard is to be maintained because that's why God has leaders. Leaders are supposed to have been the ones closest to the authorizer who were authorized to maintain the standard. This is a very good point. So we walk around as Christians, and so we don't call evil evil, but yet they call our good evil. Now, they are evil. You are killing people. People are dying. Gangs are multiplying and busting into people's houses. Marriages are falling apart. Crime waves are like the way of life. As a matter of fact, where we once had peace, we now have crime. We used to have peace, but now crime is the norm for culture. And you can see it in television. You can see it in movies. Everything is about crime. Go to the internet and see how many crime shows are on the air. Where there's crime, obviously there's loss and there's harm. So when we think about judging, of course, they have already judged our good as evil. Isaiah says so in his prophecy. He says, but woe to those who call good evil and evil good. When they decide that we are religious, that's a judgment. That's a judgment statement. We're religious. That's a judging statement. Well, but we just think Christians are all crazy. That's not a judgment. I mean, we just stopped making fun of obese people in shows because they rose up and said, who do you think you are? What gives you the right to tear down another human being for something we can't do? This is not something I chose. Most obese people didn't wake up saying, guess what I'm going to be tomorrow? Woo, I already got it worked out. I'm going to eat this. I'm going to do that. No, but yet they were judged. They were judged so badly that you couldn't go to certain stores. I remember before losing weight, going to a store where this skinny little girl acted as if I was some sort of a figure from a horror show. I said, well, do you go? We don't go past 7 or 8 or whatever she said. And I'm looking at you counting your ribs. I'm counting your ribs. When they called that a refugee. And I think a lot of these people who are artificially slim like that, this is my judgment. I got some. But I think that they are refugees of fashion and of somebody's concept of womanhood and somebody's idea or feeling that women ought to be not seen, evaporated. Somebody asked me recently, because I'm not known for holding my peace, and keeping. I'm not too known for that. So, and this person knows. And so they asked me recently, well, what size you going to be? And I always say, people ask me, so, what are you going to go? 4, 6, 10? No, I'm going to 10 and I'm stopping. Why? Because I don't like the God girl look. I don't. If you're thin and cute, God bless you. Because normal people, when they're that size, I'm giving you just one example. Normal people, when they're that size, you can't count their bones like that. Because the muscles are fitting the body. So it stunned them. And I thought to myself, because of this agenda of we all have to do things, whatever these little, I call them boardroom minions say, we don't realize it. So there was a boardroom meeting that says, hey, I know how to get Christians. Tell them they can't judge because they live by the Bible and the Bible judges. So what we'll do is that we'll put the quash on the judging. That's what we'll do. And then we don't have to worry about being uncomfortable. We can still have our laws. We can still make our addicts. We can still make our perverts. We can still make our rejects. We can still make our bondage, our slaves and captives. We can do that. And and anytime they say anything that's related to life and wholesomeness, we'll call it judging. That's what we'll do. And so they had this wonderful little thing, and somebody said, great idea. They went out, got some PowerPoints, got some big old charts on the board, showed how many people that they can affect, how long it would take to minimize and marginalize Christian fervor. And then he said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do, now all we need now is to figure out the outlets. So we got some outlets. We're going to do it in education. We're going to do it in books. We're going to do it in schools. We're going to do it in movies. We're going to do it in TV shows, documentaries, psychological treatments and therapies. We got this worked out. We're going to make sure that people feel okay in their destructive way of life, whether it's self-destruction or social destruction. And so we were talking about it in a class. One of the classes that I teach in my school at Price University is we're introducing biblical psychology, because I realized that biblical psychology doesn't exist. Now, I've searched the web and searched different areas. You can't find biblical psychology. You can find Christian psychology, but it's not the same as biblical psychology. So in this class, we happen to have one or two clinicians. And as we were working through the various subject matter, she said to me, they don't want you to heal people. Psychology, therapeutic path of today is not about healing. It's about helping people recognize their evil, recognize their wrong, recognizing their demons. You can pick whichever one you want, and then teaching them how to live with it in a productive manner. I was like, that devil done flat out lost his mind. Flat out. That devil has definitely lost. I'm telling you. Yes, it is a devil. You know that's a devil. So I'm an addict, or I'm predisposed to addiction, and I just need to learn how to live like that, or come up with some behaviors that make it not offensive to anybody else. Why are we having cannabis shops? Why is that? Because we are in an era where evil has risen and the darkness is great. And anything that is reflecting Christianity as Jesus brought it to the planet, something else. Even among Christians, we have the same issue. Well, I just don't think that's what the word said, but I don't think that's what it's, but the point is that I cannot understand what devil brings the eyeglasses that make people see something in Bible that's not there. I'm lost on that. It's almost like you sit down and they say, hey, get the glasses, get the blinders. Okay, put the rose in there. Okay, well, this one doesn't want rose. We're just going to put something dark in there. What is that? A is A, B is B. And so what we have, which is interesting, what we have is that people who have never touched the Bible are judging the Bible. And Christians are bowing to that. I ask you, okay, so do you read your Bible? Well, I have one. Do you read it? Because sometimes you have to ask people what they do with the word that they're fighting you with or fighting you about. So what translation do you read? Well, I read the so-and-so and the so-and-so translation. So if you're reading the so-and-so and so-and-so translation, which is fine because sometimes we need those easy readers, then do you go back to evaluate whether or not they translated or changed it? What was it, Ashley, that you said the Pope was changing? Do you remember? One of our, just changing it because the influence of darkness is so great and the payoff for abandoning Christ is so sweet that you're going to rewrite scripture. How you going to do that? We can't rewrite your little prayer book. We try to rewrite anything the Pope says. I'm telling you, the Vatican going to cut up. Which one is it? The Lord's Prayer. Now, we have been Our Father, which art in heaven for how long? What is this change? Can you read it out? I don't mind. Every now and then I talk to the people out here so you all understand that I'm not alone in a little closet with a camera. Wants to change. Now, why are you even messing with that? Why? Because to this Pope, there is no real Jesus. Because if you mess with any other author's work, they would take you to court for it.
He's wanting to change it because he feels that the translation contradicts other teachings in the Bible, and because it induces temptation. And the much recited prayer, followers call on. The Lord's Prayer. It is, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. That's the phrase that he wants to change because he feels like that is an inaccurate interpretation of that.
But other scriptures say that God does that. What is James? James said God is going to lead you through. God said he's going to lead you in trials. There is a passage in Chronicles that says that God is going to lead you into temptation, test your heart. Deuteronomy 8 says, I led you. I suffered you to hunger. There are a lot of scriptures that support that. And so the whole idea is that humans are inherently good. They're bought into that. And because they are inherently good, then they don't need to be tested. But God tests everything. I mean, everything. Trials, tribulation, he's got to test it. And you know why? Because he's a creator and he's a maker. The people who make cars test their stuff. The people who make planes test their stuff. People who make your food test their stuff. Can you imagine their test group talking about don't lead us into temptation? Don't lead us to test this. We have to think differently. We have to stop thinking religiously, and we have to stop thinking that the people who wrote the Bible did not know what they were talking about. They were ignorant. Lead us not into temptation means when you keep pressing God in things that you know, and he knows are detrimental to your well-being and your relationship with him, God is going to always have to be Alpha and Omega. And if God doesn't lead you in temptation, who does? Alpha means I've got to be the beginning. Omega means I've got to be the end. I've got to be the first. I've got to be the last, because there is no God but me. I am the only God. So if anybody's going to test the product, it's going to be me. If I'm going to test your beliefs, test your faith, test your service, test your holiness, your loyalty. That's what temptation means. God's testing you to see if you're faithful in him. He's told Israel all the time, I wanted to test you to see if you were going to be faithful to me or not. That's in there. Because temptation also means testing. It means trying the product out, making sure it's performing as designed. That's what trials and tribulations are about. You probably didn't know that. And so God judges when you keep hanging out with your old friends after he's delivered you from drug addiction or alcohol or some other bondage, and you keep going back and you keep going back. That says to God, there's a quirk in the system. There's an error in the program. There's a flaw in the mechanism. So now he's got to go in that thing. And because God's business is people and not machines, he's got to go in that thing and test it to find out where the problem is. What is it? Is it a belief system? Is it an influence from an outside force? Is it a harm or memory that keeps triggering your return to captivity, or your flirtation with what God has delivered you from? Peter talks about that. So God has to test you to find out why you can't leave evil alone. Why you are still drawn to the works of the flesh or drawn to darkness. You know, I deliver you from the occult and you still reading your horoscope every day. You don't think that's a problem? Okay, I delivered you from this and here you are going back. I've delivered you from an abusive marriage and then you're going to take it back because you can't pay the rent. So as far as you're concerned, the payoff of a butt whooping is going to be more than enough. So you can keep a roof over your head. God tests the product, but he also tests to see that the machine, the person he made, is working according to design and heading on that treadmill of purpose and destiny. Trials are not just to make your life a mess. What did Peter say? Think it not strange, the fiery trials that are to test you, to see if you're ready for promotion, to see if you can take on more in life. You realize that everybody tests. The military tests, doctors test, the bar associate, AMA, everybody tests. And they test the product before it goes out, and then they require various reviews to make sure it's still functioning. Are they still loyal to the cause? Are they still loyal to the ethics, the integrity? But when it comes to Christianity, everything is some sort of blithe existence where we just do what we feel and nobody can tell us we're right or wrong. And God, if he tests us, he's a mean old God. Now you do mean things to God every day. Mess over your neighbor, sleep with your neighbor's wife, steal stuff, bear false witness, refuse to jump in when somebody else is being beaten up and whatever. We do that to God all day long for whatever reasons. But when God gets tired of it, he tests the mechanism that keeps motivating us to do that. That's what he's doing. Your test is not to say you're not saved. God is not even, once you get saved, if you have a real salvation, the business of whether or not you meant to be saved is over. The gates closed. You are no longer treated as if you're an unbeliever. You go into the process of conforming you to an eternal believer, conforming you to God's mind and mindset. Hebrews said that. So Hebrews 12 says God chastens every child he receives. He said he chastens them. And the early translation said scourges them. And he tries them with the blows of men. He said blows that hurt cleans out the depths of sin in the soul. Because you know when something hurts you, you make a decision about that. Oh, no, I'm not going to go through that again. Lost your car, lost your this, lost your that, whatever. Or even sometimes God tests you with excess. He gives you so much that your inability to manage what he's giving you, your inability to make good decisions, render good judgments, or to remain faithful to him and loyal to him are pushed to the surface. Because you real loyal if you got to, pray over every dime. But when your dimes are making dimes and your dimes are making millions, now you're in the government, your personal independence is not bound by circumstances. They now become regulated by your agreement with God's way of life. You have to render judgments because now your punishment is not immediate. It's going to take a long time for what you really believe to be dealt with or what you've done in secret to be out in light. So God has to tempt us. But who are we to say that what he wrote for those people who served him was true? Who were we to say, or that it wasn't? And so we get in this Bible and we keep changing it and we keep changing it and we keep changing it for culture's sake because we don't believe that it's God's word. We don't believe it's inspired. We believe people's ignorance ought to be mediated or mitigated by simpler versions. Now, we don't believe that in school. When you go to college, nobody cares that you can't get math. You have to keep coming to the class. Nobody cares. Oh, yeah. They always shut me off when I'm getting good and hot and juicy. I'm going to talk to them about that at our next production meeting. Meanwhile, have a great time. And remember, you can listen to this again and again and again on YouTube. Love you much. God bless. More than 10 years ago, I designed a series of web-based assessments that help you find out who you are in the body of Christ and how you're called to serve the Lord. We call them standardized ministry assessments. They give you your calling, they give you the environment, they tell you your readiness, but they do something else very special. They lay out a training track. Go to my website, drpaulaprice.com, click the button called assessments, find out more about it, and take your assessment to know where God built you to serve him today. God bless you. Again, drpaulaprice.com, hit take an assessment.